Hey everyone, we're going to be comparing the EOTech to the Holosun 510C. I already did the video, so this is kind of like an introduction to it. But I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a warning. In the video, I seem to kind of like jump a little bit all over the place, a little choppy. The reason for that is because I really wasn't planning to do the video at that particular moment. What happened is I brought out the guns, right? I brought out this Holosun 510C and this EOTech, what is this? This is the exps3-0. And when I brought them out, both of them immediately fogged up. And I thought that would be a good opportunity to basically talk to you guys about the red dots fogging up. And one of the things that you'll see in the video is that the Holosuns, right, because there's a single glass in there, basically it defogs quicker, okay? The reason is because it's a single piece of glass without any hollow space in between. The glass achieves the temperature of the air a lot quicker and the fog goes away. Whereas with the EOTech, there's two pieces of glass, front and back, okay? And what's happening is that there's like space in between, and the temperature of the air in that in-between space is going to take longer before it achieves the same temperature as the air outside. So that's the reason why the EOTech stays fogged up longer, okay? Now, of course, you can easily remedy that by putting a little spit on your finger and wiping the front and back of the glass, okay? But you know, that's one of those things to be aware of. And also, like I said, the reason why the video appears a little bit choppy, because I was under a time constraint where I had to show it to you guys before the fog went away, okay? Now, another interesting thing is in the video, I didn't quite remember the dot size of the EOTech. It is a 1 MOA dot. I had to look it up versus the 2 MOA dot of the of the 510C, and then the outer circle on the EOTech is 68 MOA versus the 65 MOA of the Holosun. Now that outer circle is really important, right? Because especially with the fog on the glass, and I'm going to show it to you guys in the video, it is a lot easier to get on target even with the fog on the glass when you have that big outer circle, right? Because you can still make out the targets through the fog, okay? So that big outer circle is really important for your target acquisition. It's also very important for your range estimating, okay? Because what's going to happen is, and this is going to be applied the same to the 65 or 68 MOA circle. They're close enough. At, you know, with a 50-yard zero, right? You have pointer, you know, from zero distance all the way out to 250 yards. You know, if you put the dot here, you're going to be either like 3 inches high or 3 inches low, okay? Now, at 300 yards, right, you put the dot on the face, and the bullets will drop into the chest. At 400 yards, you put the dot on top of the head, okay, and they'll drop on the chest. At 500 yards, you take the distance from belt to head, lift that up, and that's your holdover. But the question now becomes, how do you judge the distance, right? Especially if you don't have a range estimator with you. How do you judge the distance? So that 65 or 68 MOA circle is going to be a very useful tool, because at 200 yards, okay, your man out there is going to stand with his feet at the bottom of the circle, and then his head's going to come to the dot, okay? So at 300 yards, with his feet at the bottom of the circle, he's going to come up 3/4 of the way. At 400 yards, he's going to come up half the way. And at 500 yards, he's going to be equal to that little hash, okay? So you can judge the distance all the way out to 500 yards. And also, that's also going to apply to cars. And because cars are about 6 foot wide at the bumper, which is about the height of a man. So you can do the same thing sideways, right? You know, to a car on its front bumper, and you can use that to judge the distance. Trucks are usually about 8 feet wide, so you know you have to kind of factor that in. But that 6 foot is a good place to start. Okay. So another interesting thing that I didn't mention in the other part of the video is because I have magnifiers behind both the 510C and the EOTech. Okay. So the EOTech is a holographic, okay, which of course uses up a lot more battery, hence you go through the battery a lot faster. Whereas the Holosun is a laser red dot, basically, okay. So one of the things that I've heard people say is that when you use a magnifier like behind the holographic, the size of that dot stays the same, okay. Versus, let's say, with the red dot, right? You know, both the target, the dot, everything grows proportional, right? So if you've got a 3x magnifier, everything's going to be amplified 3 times the size of the target and also the size of the dot. Now, practically speaking, I have tested this out. I've done it before with the EOTech, with the holographic. I do not see that, man. To me, it's like because here's the thing, this 3-inch circle here, when I put this out at 100 yards. Okay, regardless of, let's start with the Holosun, regardless if I'm using the magnifier or not using the magnifier, the dot basically stays inside this, or goes right to the edge of this 3-inch square, okay? All right, so when I'm shooting, I use this so that, because otherwise if I just use a dot, the dot's gonna completely cover it up. So I use a box, okay, and my 2 MOA dot, let's say with the Holosun 510C, stays inside this box, okay? And then if I put the magnifier on, it stays inside that box, okay? With the EOTech, right, which is holographic, the same exact thing happens. Now because it's a 1 MOA dot, it appears a little bit smaller, not a whole lot smaller, because the EOTech, the holographic, it's grainy, okay? So personally, I don't like the graininess. I prefer the solid image that the red dot gives versus the holographic. But it is a little grainy. I mean, I could get used to it, but you know, I can visibly see it's a little bit smaller than the square, but it's not like it's half the size. It's just like maybe it's just inside the square over here. So when I flip the magnifier on, okay, it keeps the same exact size, okay. So the target is blown up 3 times, the square is blown up 3 times, and the 1 MOA dot is blown up 3 times. Okay, so it fits the same. So I don't know how people have been saying for years that with the holographic, the size of the dot doesn't get enlarged if you use a magnifier, because as far as I can see, it does. So I did it at 100 yards with this target here. And I also did it at 30 yards. At 30 yards, what I did is I put the dot over one of the bolts on the target, right? Because I could see the bolt, which is, I don't know, maybe half an inch wide. So same deal with both the red dot and the holographic. The dot pretty much covered up the bolt, okay? When I flipped on the magnifier, the same thing happened at 30 yards. You know, both the bolt got bigger, the dot got bigger on both of them. You know, I pretty much saw the same image. Okay, so maybe I misunderstand what people are saying. Okay, I don't know. But as far as I can tell, when you flip over the magnifier on your holographic, you know, the dot, you know, grows proportionally. It'll grow 3 times. So anyway, I'll run the video, and like I said, I just wanted to give you guys a warning. If it seems like it's a little choppy, a little disorganized, it's because I wasn't, like, you know, it wasn't planned out. It's like I had fog on the glass, and I had to get this thing done before the fog basically came off the glass. Okay, so enjoy the video. Hey, I also wanted to add something about durability, okay, reliability. Yeah, the EOTech, of course, you know, military tested. The Holosuns, right? These 3 guns that you see in the middle over here, okay, they each have at least 10,000 rounds on them. Okay, I use them as trainers, right? So I go to different gun ranges. You know, people, you know, want to learn to shoot guns, don't own guns. Here's your gun, okay? So that's how I'm able to run up very high round counts on these guns. Now these are also 9mm blowbacks. Okay, blowback actually has more recoil than your 5.56. Okay, because it's a direct blowback. There's no unlocking. There's nothing to slow down the bolt. So it tends to be a lot more brutal. It tends to break hammer pins. That's why I have like enhanced hammer pins here. So I've broken hammer pins on these. I've broken multiple firing pins, extractors. I go through extractors pretty quickly on these blowback guns. So the guns are pretty brutal compared to 5.56 ARs, and they still have the original optics on them. Okay, so and I own many more besides the one you see on the table, and I've never had a problem on them despite the high round counts. Today we're going to be comparing the EOTech exps3-0 to the Holosun 510C. Okay, so I've done lots of videos on the Holosun 510C. I've done a few on the EOTech. If you look through the glass, you can see how, I'll show you from the front, you can see how the glass is kind of fogged up because I just went from, I brought it from indoors to outdoors and it immediately fogged up. Well, one of the nice things about the big windows, right, is that, I'm gonna take my glasses off. You can still kind of see through them even with fog on the glass. There you can see the red dot, and I don't know how well you're gonna be able to make it out in the camera, but through the glass, I'm also able to make out the targets in the back. Now, let me put you on the Holosun, right? Now, the Holosun is actually a little bit easier to look through the window and see the targets in the back through the fog that's on the glass. All right, it's starting to fade away a little bit. You can see that on the edges. The reason is because when you look inside, right, there's basically just a single piece of glass when I put my finger in there. Okay, so there's a single piece of glass, whereas the EOTech that has two pieces of glass, right? There's one right there and one over here. So you got two pieces of glass. So because you're looking through two pieces of glass, I think that you know, that fog becomes more of an issue versus the single piece of glass. Now, the Holosun is a red dot, so what's happening, you have a laser that's actually reflecting on the glass. If your glass breaks, you're not going to have a reflection. You're not going to be able to see anything. With the EOTech, if the glass does break completely, you should still be able to see the red dot because it's holographic. Okay, so it's kind of like hanging out there in space somewhere. So even with the glass broken, you will be able to use this. Okay. Now, as far as size, the EOTech is going to be bigger. It's going to be a little bit heavier. I don't know how much heavier, but it's going to be a tiny little bit heavier. The Holosun is a little bit lighter. Now, battery life, right? That's a big thing between these two, because the Holosun, it's got the 2032 battery, and it's also solar powered, right? You can see the solar panel there on top. The EOTech has this drum battery in here. I don't remember what it is, but this thing is a battery hog. The batteries are gonna run out on this. Okay. Now the Holosun does have an auto off. So after, I think, 8 hours, it's going to automatically go off. You got to hit one of the buttons over here to make it go on. With the EOTech, it's going to automatically go off after, I think, 8 hours, okay, or 4 hours. I think if it depends on which button you hit to start it up. But after either 8 hours or 4 hours, it's automatically going to go off. Then you have to hit some button to start it up. With the Holosun, that's not the case. Okay, it's always on. Okay. Every time you pick it up, it's just on. It does automatically go off when the rifle is motionless, right? And then as soon as you pick it up, it's on. So you can expect the red dot to always be there with the Holosun, okay, versus the EOTech. Now, as far as the magnifiers that are behind it, I've been using both. I've like switched them where I put the EOTech behind the Holosun behind the EOTech. I mean, it doesn't make a difference to me. I mean, they both work the same. I mean, there's no major. The only thing that kind of makes a difference to me is with the EOTech. This latch over here extends a lot further back. So that can cause a little bit of interference here with the charging handle. I actually had to move this slightly up a little bit to make sure I had the clearance to put my hand here with the Holosun design, right? This is the HM3X. Because it's a shorter latch, that's just not an issue. Okay, so even if I had an extended charging handle here, it's on the side. It doesn't extend behind it. Whereas with the EOTech, it extends behind it. Okay, let's take a look through here again. See if the glass cleared up a little bit. So I've been using this style for, I guess, at least 5-6 years now, and this is like my primary trainer, like for what I train people with. Okay, and one of the reasons why I like it so much is, like, if you get in there, right, if I put in somebody that's new to guns on this, right, they're gonna find that red dot very easy. Okay, likewise, if you're doing any moving and shooting, right, with that big window, it's a lot easier to find that red dot or that big circle, because especially with the fog on the glass, we're not looking for that little dot. So I think this has the 2 MOA dot, and the EOTech is a little bit smaller, so I think that's a 1 MOA dot. All right, so same deal here. If this is moving around, see if I can make it a little bit brighter. See how that works for you guys. All right, so if you're moving around, you can see how you can keep track of that dot right there, the big circle. Again, we're not looking at the little dot in the center, right? That's pretty useless in CQB, or if you're moving and shooting, or if you're in a moving vehicle. We're looking for that big circle and trying to get that on target. So the fog that's on the glass right now is actually very useful for showing you guys that, hey, you know, especially like in the fall, in the winter, and in rainy conditions, you're gonna have fog on that glass, and you know it's gonna be there, and you gotta work through it. So with the Holosun, because there's just less glass there, right? The fog seems to be like less of an issue. Just, you guys can see the results yourself. I mean, it's just easier to look through this while it's got fog on it. Good. Okay, so pulled out a couple more of these ARs that have these Holosun 510s. You can see over here that this one still has fog on that glass. Okay, so despite the fog on the glass, okay, now you got, if you give a gun to somebody that is shooting for the first time, they're not going to hold it properly. Okay, I've seen people, like, especially like brand new shooters, they're gonna try to do all sorts of weird things. So even if you hold this thing like in some weird way like this, right, and even with the fog on the glass, you can hold this gun upside down, okay, and you can still make your hits in the most weird, unconventional positions because of that big window. Okay, and that's going to apply to the EOTech. It'll apply to these 510Cs. Anything that has a large window like this. So here's the thing: when I'm training people, right, I usually have about 10 minutes to sell them on the gun culture, right? Because a lot of times it's the wife of somebody that's kind of interested in shooting. Okay, so before red dots, I would, when we just had iron sights on the guns, most women, probably 80% of women that weren't already interested in guns, when I would put them on guns, like, they really, with iron sights, trying to work them through how to line up the sights and all, 80% of women lost interest. Okay, when I started putting red dots on guns, all of a sudden I went to like 90% of women liked shooting guns. Okay, so that's a big thing, especially if you're trying to sell people on the gun culture. You got to be able, you got 10 minutes to sell them on it, okay? 10 minutes to give them a quick safety briefing of the gun rules, gun in safe direction, finger off trigger until your dot's on target. All guns are always loaded, right? And from there, you got to basically teach them how to take how to get into a stable position, right? 4 points of contact, pull it into the chest, head forward on the gun, okay, safety off. So, what I find is with AR-15s, with these big red dots, right, big window red dots, it's a much easier sell versus even like if I use a red dot that has a smaller window. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll put, especially women, on the gun, and because the gun is not properly positioned, and again, like, especially with women, like, you have to, again, I got 10 minutes to sell them on it, but you can't be too pushy at the same time. So however they get it on the gun, like maybe it's a little too low, right? They got to be able to bring their head down and find that big circle, because once they see that big circle, it's like their eyes light up, like, oh, I see it, okay? And even if their position isn't great, maybe their feet aren't good, maybe the gun's sitting a little too low over here, maybe it's too far out. That's one of the most common things I see with people. They put the gun way too far out, right? Way too far out on the shoulder, like almost on their arm. And now they gotta bring the head way over, okay? If they can make that, if they can see that red dot, now all of a sudden you like, almost, that's almost like step one, because like now you tell them, okay, you see that red dot, don't lose it, okay? Just bring the stock in more towards the center, bring it up a little bit higher, so just the toes touching you, bring your head down to the gun. That big circle is like kind of a starting point to get the rest of the pieces to fall into line, okay? And I mean, I've been doing this for about 15 years. Most of the people that I train, brand new shooters, half of them women, okay? A lot of them kids, okay? It's a lot easier to train people with the big window optics. Now, you might say, hey, well, it doesn't make a difference. I'm an experienced shooter. The people in my house are experienced shooters. We're not concerned with that. But here's the thing. One of the things I have found is that the things that work best for beginners, okay, work best for experienced shooters under stress, okay? So under a stressful type of situation, like all of a sudden, easier, easier really does work better for you. So when I put people in situations that they are not familiar with, because if you know where the targets are, you know what you're shooting, you know what position you're going to be in, I mean, yeah, it's easy shooting. But a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take people through a course, right, where they don't know what the targets are, okay, where I put them in weird positions that they're not used to shooting from, and all of a sudden it's like they're forgetting very basic things like how to take the safety off, okay, how their sling works, because now I've overloaded them, okay? So that's where a big window, big circle, aiming point makes a humongous difference. I've seen it many times. So definitely big window optics on your primary go-to gun. No doubt, seen it many times. That's going to work the best. Now there's other situations, because that's not the only thing I use. Like for example, on some of my ARs, like an AR pistol, I wanted to run a little bit lighter. Maybe I use like a slightly smaller optic, or maybe I want something that has a built-in bullet drop compensator. For shooting at further distances, that's fine. But in my opinion, for your go-to gun, you want a big window optic, okay? Now, specifically, EOTech versus the Holosun 510C. So over here, this is a $1,700 gun, okay? This is Delta Level Defense, okay? They're made in Stamford, Connecticut. I did a video covering this gun. Beautiful gun. Like I said, $1,700. So yeah, on a gun like this, yeah, sure, you're gonna put on the $650 EOTech, because you're matching up expensive optics with expensive an expensive gun here. Okay, but here's my thing on go-to guns, SHTF guns, okay? All SHTF guns are considered disposable, okay? If, you know, the idea of losing the gun, abandoning the gun getting destroyed, right, because it gets, let's say, run over by a truck or something, you know, if that's something that really worries you, okay, that's not the gun you should be using, okay? So I think, my opinion is the best go-to guns are like your Palmettos, your Bear Creek Arsenals, your, you know, Radical guns, cheap guns that, you know what, if the gun gets lost, broken, stolen, not the end of the world, okay? So in my opinion, like having more guns with more optics is better than one expensive gun, okay? Now the other thing here is, like, here I got like that Holosun 510, that EOTech over there, $650. These Holosuns over here, they're like $300. Okay, so for the cost of one EOTech, you can get 2 of these Holosuns. So it's going to be a lot more useful in, you know, what's going. Let's put it this way: what's going to be a lot more useful in an SHTF situation? You shooting one gun, or you arming multiple people, family members, neighbors, etc., and having more guns shooting, okay? So realistically, having more guns shooting is always going to beat having only one big expensive gun shooting. So again, the reason why, yeah, even though EOTech is very nice, it's nice that, hey, I got myself here a military optic. I think in a real SHTF type of situation, having more guns with more optics is going to win the day. Okay, these 2 guns, I brought them out from indoors at the same time. The Holosun, which only has 1 window, has cleared up. There it is. So this has cleared up. The EOTech, in the same amount of time that both of these have been outdoors, has not cleared up. I mean, you can still see through the fog, but the glass is still fogged up. Okay. These other guns here, they've been out less time. You can see it's almost, I mean, it's the edges have cleared up. Well, it's clearing up. It's clearing up faster. Because what I think is happening here is, like, because you got just one piece of glass, the temperature of the glass is getting to the same temperature as the environment around it a lot faster. All right, so you see how that one's almost cleared up. See, that one's starting to clear up. So with the EOTech, we got the glass in the front, glass in the back, and what's happening is this space in between. So that space in between is still like closer to the indoor temperature where this thing started out. It's taking longer for that temperature to get to the outdoor temperature, and that's why we're seeing that it is still fogged up. So that's like one of the realistic things that I see as somebody that trains people like year-round outdoors. Because usually a lot of times when people are shooting, right, they only go shooting on nice days, okay? Me, I shoot in all weather. Like, I shoot when it's negative 10 degrees below. I shoot when it's, you know, raining. I mean, that's what I do, okay? So these are the issues that I run into, right? Especially if the guns are going from indoors to outdoors. The guns that are gonna, like, immediately fog up. Now, easy way to deal with that is you put a little spit on the glass. That kind of works, okay? Sometimes it comes back, but yeah, ultimately you need the glass to be the same temperature as, you know, whatever the temperature is in the environment that you're shooting in. So the thinner glass is going to get there quicker. Okay, so that's another advantage to the Holosun design over the EOTech design.